Welcome everyone, Jack Kellogg here. September 2020 is in the books. Definitely my worst performing month of the year so far, with just $3,700 in net profits. Biggest loss of my trading career, 18,000. Worst week of my trading career. But I'm actually excited to share with you what happened because I feel like my recaps were getting a little repetitive. Every single month I would say the same thing. I'd go over the same kind of charts. And I never really got to dive into a big loss, a big mistake. And I think that would be very beneficial for a lot of you guys out there. So basically what happened was I was streaking decently at the start of the month. I was up about 30 grand. And then the 18th, I went on a little trip to Arizona with Sykes and Kyle, Monaco, if you guys know them. And I didn't get back till the 22nd. And then the 23rd, I had to move out of my apartment. And the 25th, I was moving into my new apartment. So it was a very, very busy week there. I could not concentrate fully on trading. I would say about a fourth of my time was used for trading. And when it's not your number one focus, it's a lot harder to trade. I know Sykes talks a lot about trading and traveling, but he is 20 years into the game. And I feel like a lot of you guys are newer, and I'm still new. I'm only on year 3 here. You really need to focus on trading and revolve your life around trading, or it's going to be too hard because there's going to be somebody out there working harder than you and frankly taking your money. So to get into this month a little bit now, my average loss was $962, which is a big no-no because my average gain was only $885. And you need your winners to be bigger than your losers. Cutting losses is the number one rule in trading, and never adding to losers. And I broke both those rules for my huge losses, the 22nd and the 23rd. The 30th was just very unlucky day where I think I traded well, but I just lost 7 trades straight and just closed down. Wasn't my day. The action wasn't there. Especially these last 2 weeks, it hasn't been my market, not what I'm familiar with. The week of the 21st to the 25th, a lot of these energy stocks were hot. And for me personally, I like good, solid daily charts because those are the patterns that make sense in my head. But this week, it was low flow energy stocks. And I know some traders are really good at these, but for me, they're just not my style. And none of the daily charts were what I was familiar with. Like COVID, Bitcoin, weed charts, they're all very solid, and the multi-day framework works very well on them, where a lot of the energy low floats were just one-day moves. Daily candles don't make any sense. Just to name off a few tickers, SPI, SUNW, POLA, PEC, CEI. These charts are not what I'm strengthened in and what is my niche. Biggest profit was 10.8K on JCPNQ. I will start with that trade and then get into my losers as the video goes on. But just to show you, this box is very important. This is definitely the lowest short profit and loss volume I've ever had in a month, just because there wasn't that many short opportunities. I was going long 68% of the time. My long gross profit and loss is nearly double or over double my short profit and loss combined. Even though I made more shorting, I sized up on the longs this month because there was no shorting opportunities that were super ideal. So I did end up making a really nice trade on JCPNQ, and it was my new biggest trade on my E-Trade account, my first 5-figure trade. I was super happy. But this account usually is my low risk, $500 a day, consistently, kind of scalping around, not really taking too much risk. But since my Cobra routes weren't working, there wasn't a lot of short plays, I decided to size up on E-Trade. And E-Trade isn't a great broker to size up on because it's not a direct access broker. So you're going to war with a broker that's laggier. You want it to be using the best, most efficient things. And E-Trade has free commissions. They're a little laggy, whereas DAS Trader, direct access, a lot less flickering and lag. And just something minimal like that could be the difference maker in your decision because you can see something more clearly. So that's why E-Trade's never been a big risk account for me. And I changed my rules and I paid the price for it. So to get into these losses down here, a lot of over $1,000 losses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 losses over 1,000, and really not that many 4-figure wins. So as last month, it was only 3. To get into the charts now, this is JCPNQ. This is the intraday chart. This is the daily chart. So we're going to be looking at this day right here. So some bankruptcy news came out and this stock popped up. Had really nice price action and breakout through high day. Closed very strong right at the high of the day. Big gap up from 40 to 55. Big morning spike all the way to 80. And this is where the FOMO for me started, when Cobra wouldn't execute my short orders into this parabolic spike. Was trying to get about 40,000 shares in these high 79s here once I saw level 2 turn. Then it dumped huge, and I knew where I would be covering, so I just decided to play the dips on this stock because it had so much volume, so it was easy to flip in and out for singles that would add up over and over again. And that's basically what I did. Bought my first piece here at 55, sold into 60 and 61, 62. And I was just buying the dips and flipping into the clear level 2 action with massive volume. This is what I do best on. This is what I take advantage of when the OTC market is super liquid. There's a lot of volatility. The fills are good. The daily charts make sense. And I basically just bought every dip all the way down, took a couple break-even losses here, bought this first higher low right here, sold into this push, and then I basically just left it alone after the first half of the day. That's all I wanted to play, because then you can notice the volume just drops off. So executions get a lot more harder, and there's just not as much range. So then I cut it off for the day, and that was my 10 grand trade, 10.8, 10.9 grand trade. Now to get into INO, which was my only decent short of the month. This is the intraday chart. Started uptrending from $10, got really extended all the way up here. And now we have the overextended gap down pattern right here. And I got short here, covered into the pullback. Got short again and covered, but I did nail it up here with decent size. But I was just out for the dollar a share gain because I was getting chopped up a little bit, and I think it gets a lot less predictable when it starts basing right here. I didn't like it, but it did end up making a new low a day that I completely missed. So solid overextended gap down setup there. The daily chart, very simple. 3 green days. It was this day right here. And as you can see, it's just great history of red days. Here it runs up, red day. Here it runs up, big red day. Here it runs up, big red day, but got bought all the way back up. But this is when it's a little bit higher priced, and that's when it's less predictable in my opinion as well. This was a perfect pop right into resistance. Great setup. Great name to trade. So with that one, I locked in about $4,000. Best short of the month. And then other than that, it was just a lot of singles. All right. Enough of that boring stuff. Now let's get into the juicy trades, -18 and -6. So NVN XF. Basically, this stock gapped up huge on Tesla rumors. And as you can see, it just got absolutely smoked back down all the way to 70 cents. To get into the chart, I completely missed this huge morning spike, and this gave me a lot of FOMO because this is just absolutely gorgeous. Straight up parabolic. Every candle is green. And then at the top, there's 3 minutes of stalling, and then nearly a $2 a share drop in 2 minutes. And then a great 60-cent bounce in 1 minute. So just phenomenal, predictable volatility. And this gave me a lot of FOMO for missing. This was the day that I was traveling back home from the Arizona trip. And I got back home somewhere around here from the airport, and I came home right away, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to buy this thing for the gap up tomorrow because it had based above VWAP all day. Set a lot of support, started breaking these highs into the afternoon with just an hour left. So I started buying this dip down here. And I should have just cut my position when it cracked 350 support. But it was such a small position, I didn't really care too much. I was just going to say, okay, let's just see what happens, which is the wrong mindset. I shouldn't have even been in this when it starts going against me. And I just should have cut my small position, but I didn't. Came back down, and then it has a little green candle here. And I thought it'd be a good dip buy to get in and then kind of just risk the low of this candle right here and play it for the gap, but it didn't, and it kept selling off. And then unfortunately I added more here at 3, just kind of a last ditch effort to add more here and then sell into the bounce back to resistance for break even. At this point, I just have averaged down so much, and my average was in the 320s, 330s. And then unfortunately, it did not bounce at all and just broke through 3, which had to be my all-time stop out. First time getting below VWAP post 3 p.m. I don't want to gamble that overnight. Super weak. And basically I sold dead bottom at 291. Came down. Next day, gap down huge on bad Tesla reaction and battery day. So maybe a blessing in disguise. I stopped out here and it didn't keep ramping, close at 320, but I most likely would have been out once this broke support here. Really don't want to overnight this when it pulls all the way to $3, but I thought there'd at least be a bounce to get out for break even. I broke my rules by not cutting my small position here. Should only be adding to winners, not to losers. took 10 cents of slippage on the sell, lost 6 grand as I just got home, and it was like 30 minutes down 6K into the close. Super dumb. Felt like I was just throwing away money at this point. And then from there, it got worse the next day. The next day we have SUNW, and this was my biggest loss ever. First things that I'm going to note here is the daily chart never has a good history of anything. A lot of spikes and fails, gross candles. So let's get into the intraday chart here. SPI was the main runner of the day. The stock spiked from about 2 to 45, and it was in the energy sector, so people started buying the next best energy stock that was up the highest percent, and it was SUNW. And I actually got long on the $1 break, 6,000 shares, and I sold it in the 120s, somewhere up here. I thought it was a decent trade for 20%. And unfortunately, it held and held again, and then just went full-blown supernova. And I had got caught shorting a couple of these spikes in here because SPI was halted to the downside, and I knew it was going to gap down huge when it opened because it was indicating a much lower open price. So instead of listening to the tape, I was just thinking, oh, it's just going to crash with SPI. So then had to cut that for a loss. Got re-short somewhere, I think in this candle here. And then it just squeezed up, was down a little bit. But I just had small size. This wasn't really like a big trade. I think I just had a few thousand shares from 280 or 290. Went up to 450. And then it crashed back down. And the mistake that I made was I had such small size on the short, and I didn't nail the top, so I was already a little tilted. And when it opened, I just covered it, and I wanted to focus on buying it for the bounce. Because if you guys are familiar with Tim Sykes' 7-step framework, you'll know it has the 1 where it's sneaking around, the 2, it starts to speed up, the 3, the supernova, right? The 4, which is the dump, and then the 5 is usually the dip buy, where you buy it and it bounces maybe to this 260, 270 level, and then rolls over from there. So I had made the big trade on JCPNQ, buying the dip, and I knew that this was a supernova and it should bounce too. But unfortunately, I wasn't taking into consideration that SUNW was not a multi-day runner. SUNW was not the correct time of day. SUNW had no news. And I started buying the dip here in the low 2s. And then I added a little bit more on this drop, and I had about $2 average with 20,000 shares, risking this 190-ish area, risk 10 cents to try to make 50, something like that. And unfortunately, it didn't really pop too much. I sold a little bit, like a couple thousand shares, and then just slammed back down. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to hold because I was just tilted, and I should have been cutting when it's looking weak. And I usually always cut when stocks aren't doing what I want. But I was in this, let's just hold and see what happens. It's fine. It'll bounce a little bit to get out for break even, which it did bounce a little bit to get out for break even. But then I should have recognized that the tape was heavy again, but I didn't recognize. I didn't sell. I sold a couple thousand more shares and then just slammed right through. And I didn't want to sell my shares. And then it came down, and I was down a decent amount. And unfortunately, I added a lot of shares here, and I was going to sell on the VWAP retest and fail. or a perk through. It should, bounce a little bit because it was at this key support that I thought was here, which there's no key support because it did not bounce. And then I just market ordered, sold all my shares, dead bottom, 125 for an 18K loss. Couldn't take it anymore. Then it gives me the bounce to get out for closer to break even, the VWAP fail, which was what I was looking for. And then it rinses back down to a buck, whatever. Next day, I was tilted. I was tired from moving. This was the day that I was clearing out my apartment. I slept in, didn't even want to think about the market. Woke up, saw it at like $8, and what was crazy was if I bag held either one of these, like it would have either been a huge loss or a huge win. Um, it would have been like a 300 grand profit for me on SUNW if I sold up here in the high sevens or the eights. And for the other NVN XF, if I bag held that overnight, I would have lost 30K. So just terrible to even think about these huge swings. And that's not really what trading's about. It's not about these huge up and down swings. You want to be focusing on consistency. And I'm very proud of myself for not holding any of these overnight and just bag holding, because that's not the right thing to do. Even though this would have been a ridiculous win, it would not have been the right lesson. I'm glad that I took these losses because now I got my head screwed on straight again, and I'm in my new apartment and I'm starting to trade better. Even though this last week was really slow, didn't see too much volatility anywhere. And I even had these small green days where I just couldn't get anything going. We're just like a couple $100 a day. And then the unfortunate day. So I'm not mad with this week's trading, getting back into the groove. I will recover this 25 grand. It's the first pretty significant pull off my highs that I've had. I just want to recover the proper way, which is just going to be starting small until I get my momentum going back. But I think this was a very educational lesson on losses and mindset. And another thing to note is I even knew of Roland, who took a decent sized loss shorting RBZ the day he was moving, and Matt Monaco, Mono Trader, he lost decently on SHMP when he was moving in the summer. So I knew going into this that trading and when you're moving and not focused on trading is a bad idea. And I saw other traders tweeted back to me when I made a tweet about how I lost because I wasn't focused. And they said their losses came from that as well. So it's all just about maintaining that mental aspect of trading. And that's where the human part comes in. And you can be better than a system. Art can be better, but you have to always make sure that your head's in the right space. Because trading's really not that hard once you become profitable. It's going to be the same thing over and over again. But once you start putting other factors into your trading, whatever it's going to be, say maybe you have a kid, maybe you're not getting a lot of sleep, you're moving, you're traveling, whatever it is, it's going to be you're fighting with your girlfriend, you're fighting with your parents, somebody passed away in your family. Anything that is going to significantly take your mind off trading, it's not wise to be trading during